Welcome back everybody, MC here with another video, and today we're going to fight the cultists and we're going to take out the pillars in Terraria to pretty much spawn Moonlord. We're going to be using the Influx Waver, we have the Mega Shark, I have Cthulhu, we have Stormbow, we have Tiger Staff. We're pretty kitted out. We have some pretty good gear as well. We have the full hollowed armor, Star Veil, Ankh Shields, Charm of Myths, Worm Scarf, Terra Spark Boots, and Steampunk Wings. And I have all of those on warding as well. We have a lot of potions too, so this is going to be pretty much easy peasy. First of all, anyway, we have to attack and kill the cultists. That's the start of our cultist fight. And when it comes to the cultists, it's probably one of the easier bosses or easier fights in Terraria, as long as you continuously hit the right cultist. If you hit the wrong one, he summons a dragon that does a lot of damage. And that's when the boss gets a bit more difficult. I'll show you how to recognize which one it is as soon as it splits in three, because this is the part that everyone finds the hardest. You're looking for the cultist that is fully colored in and doesn't have any like shading on it. It's pretty much going to have the darker blue coat all the time. There's always going to be one, and it's usually on the left, that is pretty much always faded out completely. And then you have one that's, as I just said, fully dark blue. Now, as far as I'm aware, I think this is still the case. The cultist, the correct cultist, can only spawn on the top or the right. It can't spawn on the left. So, or as in when it splits into three. So you never have to worry about the one on the left. You only ever have to look at the one at the top or the one on the right, which is quite easy to get used to. And then you'll never have to fight that bloody dragon. Because you don't have to fight the dragon, the cultist boss is super simple. Now, because the cultist boss is super simple, I thought I would add in the pillars to this as well, so that we can do everything in one. So it looks like our first pillar is going to be the solar panel pillar. So to use or to fight the solar pillar, there are a few tricks you can use. I don't use the tricks in this because I don't actually have to. Simply, one of the best things you can do is just stay down nice and low on a surface that is kind of like slightly down from where the enemies will spawn, and then they'll have to fall down towards you. As they're falling down, you kill them. Easy. And try not to jump. I would recommend not jumping too often and not flying, because the worm above your head, the flying worm, does a lot of damage. Probably one of the higher damages out of all the enemies. When it comes to the mount that I'm using, that comes from Martian Madness, and it actually shoots lasers at the enemies, which is quite useful. And that extra damage really helps, especially since it seems to have almost 100% accuracy and very good fire rate too. So this mount isn't great for anything else, really, in my opinion, but it's really good for that one thing, and that's the pillars, because you're standing in one area, you're not moving constantly. It's very effective. So I highly recommend getting the mount from Martian Madness. So as you can see here, we're just clearing up all these enemies. Every time you kill one of these enemies, they're going to have a red line that comes from them and goes towards the pillar. So you have to kill enough of them so that the line goes over to the pillar and it removes the pillar's force field, for want of a better word. So as you take out these enemies and the health bar at the bottom of the screen gets closer to 0, we know that the force field is now off of the pillar, so we need to get over to the pillar and pretty much hit it with 20,000 units of damage without dying. Very easy to die in this particular spot because the enemies are going to be coming from both sides. Just be very careful, and a lot of the enemies don't despawn once you take out the pillar as well. Also, don't forget to collect the goods when the pillar is down, because at the end of the day, the solar fragments and the solar items, or all of the items from the pillars, are really important. So now we're going to move on to the next pillar, and we are going to try and use our a little bit of a trick for this one as well. So now I actually found it very interesting in this particular go, but I am using obviously the Martian Madness mount, and I'm using a very strong summon. So I found this pillar a lot easier than normal, but this pillar can be a bit of a pain in the ass because the enemies obviously are flying and they have very unusual movement. But there's something I learned, and I learned it literally just doing this gameplay. And I also confirmed it by looking it up online. These enemies are some of the only enemies in the pillars that can't go through blocks. So if you can find a safe place to go into like a kill box and attack from inside outwards using a yo-yo or whatever, you can take out this entire pillar without actually taking any damage and or having any issues. As you can see, they are literally gathering underneath me right now, and they are having trouble because they can't get in through the blocks. If this wasn't a house full of NPCs, RIP NPCs by the way, then this would be way more efficient and I wouldn't have to worry about any enemies sneaking in through the entrance on the left. And yeah, I'm just using the yo-yo here, using the Cthulhu, and it's absolutely destroying them. So that's very important for the next time we do this pillar. I didn't know that you could actually do that. So we're going to take out the Vortex pillar now. So just to confirm, by the way, Vortex pillar to take out enemies through blocks. And now that is the second one done. We're going to be moving on to the next pillar. To the next pillar we go, and when it comes to this pillar, there's also a trick that you can do. Now, my problem with my build right now is I'm a little bit too strong for the trick, and I suppose that's a good thing in a way because it means I can also take out the pillar pretty easily. But what I would recommend that you do against this pillar is, if you see those little bubbles, unfortunately I killed them way too quickly. If you kill one and move away off the side of the map and then let it grow back into a fully grown bubble again, then destroy those, they'll constantly replicate or split. And if that's the only enemy on the screen, they'll take up all the enemies for this pillar, and you'll be able to just fight bubbles pretty much off the side of the screen and take out the pillar that way. It's very easy. Obviously, as I said, I can't show you in this footage because I'm a little bit too strong, which doesn't happen very often in Terraria in particular. And because of that, I am destroying them a little bit too quickly. So we're just going to have to take out the pillar the old-fashioned way. So solar pillar, I didn't show you the trick with the solar pillar, but just don't jump too much and don't try and fly too much. Then you have the Vortex pillar, which actually gives you the Vortex beater, the gun that I'm using. And the Vortex pillar is the one where the enemies can't go through the blocks, so make something ready for that. And then the Stardust pillar, you're taking on the bubbles, so you'll be well ready for the pillars when you do them yourself. So the next pillar we're going to be doing is probably the hardest pillar in the game, particularly if you are a speedrunner. So I'm not sure how many of you are speedrunners, but if you have ever watched a speedrun of Terraria, or if you're actually a speedrunner yourself, you'll know the pain of this pillar. Simply because, number one, the enemy or some of the mobs can stick to you. Number two, if you try and teleport away so you can go heal, they can stay on you and they can still kill you while you are teleporting away to base. One of the only enemies in the game that can actually do that. So because of that, you have to be very careful, and it's a pain in the ass making sure you do everything correctly against it. Now, the enemies themselves aren't that bad, apart from their teleportation tactics, which are, as I said, a pain. And they can pretty much surround you if you're not careful, so keep an eye on where everything is. But if you have enough damage and enough attack speed, you're going to do fine against the pillar. And I believe I don't really use this pillar myself, actually, now that I think about it, for items and weapons. But I believe this pillar is used for magic, because I don't really do magic attacks in Terraria as much as other people. So if you're a magic user, then this is definitely the pillar for you to focus on, the Nebula pillar. And I always leave the Nebula for last because I destroy the pillar, Moon Lord starts to spawn, and I literally travel to my Moon Lord area and just prepare. So I don't actually even collect the Nebula fragments until Moon Lord is dead. So I'm going to leave it there, guys. I'm going to let you watch the end of this footage of me taking out the pillar. But in general, thank you very much for hanging out with us today. I will see you next week for the Moon Lord fight. And let me know in the comment section what you think of today's video. If you have any tricks yourselves for the Nebula pillar in particular, let me know. But other than that, thank you very much, and ta-ta!